Hello and welcome to Modeller's Monday Roundup, Episode 3.
How we doing, guys? My name's Carmine. I'm actually doing a modeler review, or kind of like a what you're doing during the whole COVID-19 quarantine thing. Mr. Harrison Brown actually asked me to do it on my trains and a little bit on my layout because I actually kind of model something unique and maybe something a little bit different. Well, it's at least different and unique to me in the world of model railroading. First, a little background. I've been doing model trains ever since I was like 5 or 6. As far as like my favorite railroads and my favorite scales, obviously my favorite scale is O scale, although I do collect HO scale. I have some double O gauge. I have some G scale. I have N scale. I pretty much have a little bit of everything, but my primary stuff is O gauge, and I have lots of different models. Now, a few years ago, me and my wife, we moved and we decided to get a little apartment. And naturally, I wanted a train layout. Now, all the years that I was living with my family and things like that, I always had train layouts, but they were always in a nice big 2-car garage or a spare bedroom. Well, we're in a 1-1. It's a little apartment. It's perfect for me and her, but I wanted a train layout, but I wanted something small and compact. Well, she was cool with it. And I decided actually to build my first themed layout. I guess you want to call it a themed layout. And I themed it around Walt Disney World. Now, it's not an exact copy of it, obviously, because it's a 1-bedroom apartment. I can't fit the entire Magic Kingdom in there. So I modeled, obviously, one of my favorite parts of it, which is Main Street, USA. All the buildings on the layout, I'll actually show you guys some pictures of them. They are actually cardboard. And they were pretty much like a pop-out and fold type deal. I added all interior lighting for them. I added different detail interiors, like, for example, the Town Square Theater has an actual chandelier in it. I did Rapunzel's Tower. I have, obviously, the Millennium Falcon up on the very top because I'm a big Star Wars fan, and once Disney bought Lucasfilm, that was the end of that. I 100% was getting a Millennium Falcon. The Magic Kingdom's castle is actually a Lego kit that I actually put my own lighting in, so it actually looks very good. It's very close to O scale, which is like 148, 150, depending on what you can find. Main Street Station here. This was actually released by the Disney parks in the early 2000s. I actually got this when I graduated middle school. And I'm 30 now, so that gives you an idea of how long ago that was. They do pop up occasionally online. They do go for quite a bit more than what they originally sold for. They're like around $200, but that's just a quick overview. I'll show you guys some more stuff on the layout, but I wanted to focus on the locomotives. Now, if you guys don't have me on Instagram, my Instagram is Fairest of Them All SRT8. That is because I like Snow White. She's my favorite Disney character, plain and simple. Basically, I'm going to explain to you guys and show you guys the model locomotives that I do. And I do rolling stock. My favorite railroad is obviously the Walt Disney World Railroad. Like I said, I know it's kind of unconventional. It's a theme park train. A lot of people call it a theme park ride, which it's technically considered transportation because it gets you from point A to point B at different station stops. But I have a total right now of 6 locomotives. I plan on doing all the locomotives at Walt Disney World, which I have already accomplished. I plan on doing all the ones at the Disneyland Railroad, which is going to be a chore because most of them are Forneys, which are 244Ts, which I'm going to have to cut and modify a lot of different things. And I would personally really like to try and take a swing at the Euro Disneyland Railroad stuff. I know they have pretty much 440s. It's just a matter of hunting down all these locomotives that I can find that I can cut and modify. So this is what pretty much they all start out with. Now, this is just a rolly chassis, basically. I've obviously gutted this one and things like that. They started out as MTH 10-wheelers. Obviously, I take them apart. Side rods, whistles, bells, domes, smokestacks, headlights, whatever, and I completely strip them down to bare metal. It's a little bit of a time-consuming process, but you get a cleaner base for your paint to adhere to. So after, let's say, about a month of this, you finally come out to something like this. This was my first locomotive. This is modeled after the Walt Disney World Railroad's #1 Walter E. Disney. It started out as a basic MTH 10-wheeler, stripped it down, repainted it, printed my own decals, and this is what you have. It is a labor of love. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of research. Not that I mind doing that. I really enjoy it. I do try and add some unique little features to all my locomotives. Like, for example, these have flickering ashpan glows. And on all of them, with the exception of Walter, because Walter was my first one, I tried to think a little bit more outside the box with a lot of them. And I'm going to show you with Lily Bell, that was a chore. But I wanted to do it right, so I did. Walter was the first one I added the flickering ashpan glow to. All the locomotives have custom announcements that I did record on the Walt Disney World Railroad, and I'll show you guys those when I put the other locomotives up. But like I said, Walter's got a flickering ashpan glow. He's got a lighted firebox, smoke, whistle, bell, the whole shebang. So that's Walter. Alrighty guys, next locomotive is number 2. It is the Lily Bell. So let me bring her around here. This locomotive was a chore, and the reason I even say that is if you look at the wheel arrangement on this thing, it's a 260 as opposed to a 460, which was what Walter and Roger Brogy are. So when I got this, and the funny story is I did Walter and I wasn't planning on doing any of the other locomotives, and my wife's like, why don't you do the rest of them? That was the first time my wife has ever been like, oh, well, if you did one, you got to do the rest of them, right? So I took advantage of it, and I started searching and seeing what I could find. So I bought another 10-wheeler from MTH. And because Lily's a 260, I had to do it right. Now, it's not just a matter of pulling a front wheel off and calling it a day. I mean, I could have done that, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't right to me. If you look at a profile or a picture of the Lily Bell locomotive from Walt Disney World, not Walt Disney's Lily Bell, the last drive wheel is spaced much farther from the 2 front drive wheels. Now, I had to emulate that because I was not going to be happy as a modeler if it wasn't at least close. Besides, that's one of the big discerning features that separates Roger from Lily aesthetically. They're both green locomotives. Really, the only difference is Roger's got a red cab as opposed to a green cab that Lily Bell has. So I set out on doing that. So basically what I did is I took the entire thing apart again, stripped all the paint, all that fun stuff. took the frame, and I went over with a buddy, because my buddy had a lathe. I drilled through the frame after I took my measurements for where the wheel was going to sit. We drilled it out, and I made a new brass bushing. Inserted it into the frame. JB welded it in there real good so it wasn't coming out. Then I tapped the wheel back on, leveled everything. Then I actually took 2 sets of side rods, cut them, sanded them, and I soldered them together so that they would hold, so I could make an extension and make a longer side rod to accommodate the spacing of the rear wheel, and it actually worked out really well. The smokestacks are all 3D printed, because the smokestacks that come on these things are traditional, like diamond top, stacks, and they are removable. Those are the stacks, real simple. So if I need to transport it, or if I need to get to the smoke generator, it's an easy thing to do. Once again, Lily Bell's got all custom decals. I'll show you guys pictures of that later on. Now, Lily Bell was one of the locomotives I started to change some things in. I actually did a complete lighted cab. So I did a small microchip LED up through the firebox. I mounted it on a little brass holder. I built gauges, so the gauges actually have numbers and ticks on them with brass bezels. I made an oil burning firebox door, which is what the locomotives have. So when you look into the cab, you will actually see an oil burning firebox door. And she also has the flickering ash pan glow. What I am going to show you on Lily, they all do it, but I'll show it to you on her since she's here, is the custom announcements that I did that I recorded from Walt Disney World. I recorded a few of them, so just kind of bear with me here. I'm going to run through them. I hope you can hear them. I mean, they're pretty loud here, but I don't know how the mic is on the phone. But here we go. This is the first one. First one is simple. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Railroad.
Howdy, folks. If you're just joining us, welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Railroad.
That's the first one. Next one I got is Fantasyland. Now, this was before Fantasyland was actually constructed, the new Fantasyland at least. And I plan on leaving this announcement in there until we move into a larger house and I can actually build a Fantasyland. So it's a little outdated, but I'm a stickler for accuracy, and I'd rather have it like this until I have my Fantasyland done. So
It looks like we're almost out of the woods, folks, and we're coming to the outskirts of Fantasyland, a place where any dream can come true.
all right. Next one is one of their steam train spiels that you hear on the route.
There are some who say that this steam train is a little old-fashioned, but for me, it's the only way to travel.
Next one is Main Street. This is my favorite one. This is the one when you hear pulling into Main Street. And it's actually cool because when I got the cast member to record it, they threw a little bit more onto it. So you'll actually hear some, information on what's available on Main Street and things like that. I think it's cool, so.
This is Main Street Station, Main Street, USA. Main Street Station serves the park entrance, shopping along Main Street, USA, and Cinderella's Castle.
I think that's so cool. I love that part. All right, next one is a simple conductor announcement. And it's cool because in the background, I don't know if you can hear it on the phone, but in the background you actually hear the real train with the clickety-clack and stuff, so it kind of adds to the ambiance for me at least. I love that. And the next one is just about the steam train.
By the way, we're traveling on pure steam power. This old locomotive was descended from the mighty train that powered the golden age of steam.
And just a little side note, if you guys don't know, these are all Baldwin Locomotive Works built locomotives. They were all built in the 1900s. Lilybell is the youngest. She was built in 1928. The oldest is Roy. He was built in 1915, if I remember correctly. I believe it was 1915, or it might be 1916. I'll double check and I'll let you know. And the two brother locomotives, Roger and Walter, were built in 1925, I believe, and they were actually built next to each other. So they're two consecutive numbers. Now on the locomotives too, before I do the final sound, there's a little locomotive builder's plate. When the decals were made, I took the images that I took of each locomotive's builder plate and scaled them down and used them. So whatever you see on the locomotive is the actual picture of the builder's plate on the locomotive in the park. That's kind of like a little hidden thing, something I'm only going to care about and I only know, but I still think it's cool. So here's the last announcement.
Howdy, folks. If you're just joining us, welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Railroad. Out the pressure.
And that's all of them, guys. And I'm going to show you Roger Brogy. He's number 3. Alrighty, guys. The next locomotive up is number 3, Roger E. Brogy. So let me bring him around here. Alrighty, this is the 3rd locomotive in the Walt Disney World Railroad's roster. This is actually the brother or sister locomotive, however you want to say it, to number 1, Walter E. Disney. Like I said, they were sequentially numbered, so this one was built right next to the Walter E. Disney locomotive. This is named after one of Walt Disney's great friends, a gentleman named, obviously, Roger E. Brogy. He was the head machinist in the Walt Disney machine shops when they were building the park. He was actually the gentleman that taught Walt how to build and machine on lathes and things like that. And he actually helped Walter build his 1/8 scale Lilybell locomotive that ran around his backyard in Holmby Hills, California for the Carolwood Pacific Railroad. Now, Mr. Brogy's son, Michael Brogy, is still around. He runs the Carolwood Society. They are a group that I am a part of. I met Mike many times. He's a great guy. Me and him keep in contact every once in a while. The last time I went up there, they have the meeting every year. I actually finished Roger. I was planning on building it and bringing it regardless, but at that time, I pretty much finished up Lilybell and Roy, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to bring them all, so I had to find a way to transport them. I didn't want to put them back in their original boxes, so I'll show pictures of that as well. I went out and I got, of all things, I know this is terrible, a rifle case. But it's a pluck foam case, so I actually fit all 4 of the locomotives in there with my Carolwood Society pin. I have a spike from the railroad and a cross section of rail from the railroad in the original 70s. It all fits in there. And I actually had brass nameplates made for the locomotives. Like I said, I will put a picture up so you guys can see that. It's a wonderful little thing. Now, granted, when I brought the locomotive for Mr. Michael to sign, it was not in that. I did actually just put that thing back in its original box just to get it, because we were actually meeting at the AMC Theater in downtown Disney, which is Disney Springs now. Mike didn't know anything about the engine, that it was happening. I've kept in touch with his son, Steve Brogy. Me and him are good buddies. We talk here and there. When I brought the locomotive, Mike seemed kind of in shock, and I was kind of honored because I know some people have built G-scale models for the Carolwood barn and stuff like that, and Mike signed the locomotive for me. He was thrilled about it. He thought it was awesome. He talked to me about it pretty much the whole weekend, and I am planning, when I finish up this next locomotive here, I will eventually garner enough parts to build Mike one too for his desk. I think it would be an honor to have my work there. He thought it was really cool. He's seen my layout. He thinks it's awesome. He's a great guy. You know, if I have any questions, he's always willing to help. I try and go to that Carolwood Society meeting every year. It's a great meeting. I also hit Mickey's Not So Scary when I'm up there usually. It's a great time. But Roger Brogy, same deal. He's got the lighted interior with the gauges. He's got the lighted ashpan glow, the announcements, all the custom decals, and everything. So that is number 3, Roger Brogy. Now we're going to be going on to our 4th locomotive. Alrighty, guys, here comes our 4th locomotive. This is locomotive number 4, Roy O. Disney. This is locomotive number 4, Roy O. Disney. He is a 440 American class locomotive. The oldest one in the park, actually. It's 1916. It's actually funny because when I decided to do Roy and I was looking for a 440, I was jumping between the MTH Premier line, which is what he is, and the MTH Rail King. Now, the Rail Kings have a squared off boiler front, which I didn't think suited Roy as much. He's a little bit of a bigger locomotive anyway, so I ended up biting the bullet and just going with the Premier Line one. I don't regret it. I love it. It looks great, and it was actually kind of uncanny because all the other locomotives I have are Proto Sound 3.0, which is the newest sound system, so like LED headlights and all that fun stuff. This happens to be Proto Sound 2, so it's weird because it's an older sound system and it's the older locomotive in the park, so I just thought that was kind of funny. The only thing on this, that smoke unit, the whining is horrendous. I actually have to take the thing apart and oil it a little bit because that whining is crazy. And you will notice that the sound is a little bit lower on this one because it's a smaller ohm speaker. I will be replacing the speaker eventually. So, anyway, this is number 4, Roy O. Disney. This started out as a Premier Line Union Pacific 119, one of the Golden Spike locomotives. I stripped the entire thing apart. I actually got the locomotive on a trade. I traded another engine for this one because it and I tend to find that most people are not interested in these early era locomotives. I'm like the one odd guy, with the exception of HO scale aficionados and stuff like that. Anyway, took the entire thing apart, you know, went through the whole thing with it, decals, paint, high gloss, I mean, you name it, I did it on this locomotive. I actually changed the whistle. The whistle on this thing originally protruded from the backside. I actually filled the hole in and put a new whistle on there so it actually matched the Walt Disney World Railroad ones. I moved the air pump from one side to the other and put a larger air pump such as the ones at the park have. Headlight was changed. The smokestack was a 3D print as well. And the tender, if you noticed on some of the other tenders, they all have wood loads. Now I know in the park there's no wood loads on the trains because they fire, you know, number 2 diesel fuel or oil or whatever you want to call it. This one had a coal load. So when I actually stripped the paint, I took all the coal off because it was separately applied. And I made this one a true oil burner. So I made my own hatches for the top of the tender and stuff like that. I'll show you guys more pictures of that as we go on. But this is number 4, Roy O. Disney. I think he is one of my favorite. He's the most dainty looking one, I would say, out of all of them, and I just think he's awesome looking.
I'm going to give you a demonstration on a modelling aid. It's called Oyamaru. Several companies make it,
but with different names, a UK company making it under the name of Instant Mould. So what is it for those of you who have not heard of it? It's a reusable modelling material that comes in many colours. I've gone for Oimaru as it is cheaper, about £1 a strip, with the smallest pack about 6 strips. I'm afraid I don't have an unused strip at hand to show you what it looks like unused. So now on how to use it. I'm going to show you how to do a simple press mould, but you can do multi-part moulds. What you will need is a cup of boiled water, don't hold it by the cup, use the handle because that hurt. Something to get it out of the cup with, and the bit of model that you want to recast. I've just grabbed a bit of model here, it's got detail so I can show you what it looks like. So what you do is you drop it in there in the water for a little while. I don't know how quickly this one's going to melt because the cup was sitting there for a while. Once it's been sitting in that pot of water for a while, you get it out, and if you look now, it's become all pliable and stringy. What you do with this is, for this press mould, you just push it down over the bit you want to remake. And then if you've done it on a little coaster or something, you can put it in the fridge to speed up the drying time, but it will take a little while to cool down. So once it's dry, you can just take your piece of model out, and then with milliput green stuff, or in the past I have actually used polyfiller on some bits, you just make the bit you need and you just start pushing it in there, pushing it in as hard as possible, trying to get it into all of those little bits of detail. Now your mould won't always come out right the first time, so it may take a few attempts. Several times I've given up on bits actually, just because it just wasn't coming out, and I'll come back to them again another day when I need them. But always persevere, and like I said, those bits that haven't come out right, I'm going to have another go at one day when I need them. I was just experimenting on them. So once you've got it in as good as possible, you then just need to wait for that dry. Now this part I've made several moulds of before, because after a while it's a good idea to redo the moulds if you're doing tons of them. If you can see, here's the original, and here was a piece towards the end of the bit of mould I was doing last time with it. Now there will be bits of cleaning up, like that, but it's generally, there you go, that's what it comes out like. But I've got some other bits here that I've done as well. Now with these bits here, I've not overly been worried how they've come out, because for what I'm dealing with is a ramshackled army for a wargaming game called Battlefleet Gothic. So here's the original. It's a bridge piece for a bridge of a ship. Find the camera. Nope, it's lost focus. There we go. And here is the mould that it did. So if you look, this was just a simple press mould. You will get an idea of what the sort of detail you're doing. And that's it for today.
Okay, right, here we are. Good morning again from Vancouver. Saturday morning here for those of you who live far away. Going to show you what I've been doing on the railway in the last week. The first thing you'll notice is a dirty great mess where there used to be a retaining wall. Now it's just a dirty great mess. This eventually will be the end walls of the locomotive works. So they will butt straight onto the yard itself. Be a simple job of foam board and brick paper. A few embellishments, but nothing too much. A line over here, you'll see the roof of the engine shed, low relief engine shed, has now been covered in this brick paper. This is 3DK brick paper, which is available various forms from other download companies, and there are a few excellent ones out there. The same with the signal box, as you can see, that too has been covered. Both roofs will need a little more weathering now using the airbrush when I get around to that. Show you what else we've done on the signal box. I decided to add the supports to the walkway so that the people do not come crashing down to earth or swing from the railings. I also did some work on the stairs, if it's visible. I added some wear to the treads. You'll notice on treads on old wooden stairs they tend to wear away in the middle, and I just generally graded up a little bit with a wash, and also took away some of the airy weathering with a damp cotton bud. Just streak it down a little bit, it just tidies it up. So she's waiting for an interior to arrive and it should nearly be finished. I decided to add the lighting rig, bring the lighting out to the front of the layout this week. When it's finished, it will have at least one more light on it anyway, and it will have a shelf on top. Just a nice light foam board, but it will be very useful storage for me. The signal box is now positioned to that side of the entry road, and I have in fact just added the glue to that, so that's now nice and wet and in the drying process. I also decided in the week to remove the lemur body from the V-Trains 37049 and bring back out the V-Trains body, which is 207 William Cookworthy. She did come with all the embellishments for Cornish Railways as well, but I didn't want them on, so they've been removed. And a strange thing with this loco when it came was the fact that, let me get my pointer and show you, the multiple unit cables into these sockets here, and somebody had chopped these sockets off for some reason, so I have had to scratch build 2 new ones and drill holes in the bottom, which I can tell you was an interesting experiment when you see, if you can, the size of them. But anyway, later today I will add the wire cables to them and she will be good to go. Maybe a little clean up of the front end. You can see where the Cornish Railways emblems were, so I need to clean them up a little bit so it's not as obvious. But other than that, I've not a lot more to show you. Still looking at a very Scottish themed day today. 2 26s and a 47 large logo. Everybody's favourite Class 40. Class 47, Class 25, and nothing really new to show you other than that. The downloads for the driver's bothy stroke engine shed office kit have arrived, but I need to order the windows yet from Model Railway Scenery for that. And this leg here will be gone by the time I bore you with the next video. That will be gone, and I will have it supported against the wall, which will make a big difference to me as well. So I'm trying to get these things out of the bottom there. It can be pretty awkward. As I said, nothing much else to do. To show you this week, nothing new anyway. A lot of the work has been cleaning some locomotives and ripping bits of it away. I have to be careful not to get carried away, otherwise I start to rip the whole thing up and start again, which I don't want to do, because on the whole I'm happy with it and it works. but I did want to change this end. I was never overly convinced of that end, so I think it will be good to bring it as part of the works and bring it into the yard itself. And so that is it really. Next time I might, apart from showing you what I've done, I might show you my Lima engines and how I make up the pipes for the buffer beams. It's very, as I said before, it's a very, very simple thing, but can be fairly effective. We shall see. We shall see how much I feel like boring you people. Okay, thank you very much, and goodbye from Vancouver.
Hi there, welcome back. Obviously I'm working on this. It's a Revell 124 Shelby Mustang GT 350H. If you saw in the last episode, progress of this was doing very well, at which point we left it with just the last of the glazing to be put in. So have a look and see how the progress has continued. So all the glazing has now been completed with the side windows at the back now installed. However, we have got some paint touch-ups to do, and obviously at a later stage decals are going to have to be applied. So we're going to get some masking and cover all the windows up now ready, and that will then give us a chance to be able to do the touch-ups. And then obviously with the masking is already in place, it'll be ready to spray some varnish over it for the decals at a later stage. So the Mustang has now had its touch-ups, and we've given it a spray over with some cheap hairspray just to give it some sort of little finish ready for decals. The masking, however, will be left on until the very, very end. Okay, so the next bit will be flipping this over, so we've got the underside, and then installing the interior. So the progress has been ongoing. A load of little bits have had to be put in, including the front suspension, and now the chassis has also all gone in. So the next part will be working at the front, and we've got to make up the front grille, which is made up of two different parts. These two different parts here. So while the radiator is being held together and waiting for all the glue to dry, we will now put the four wheels into place. We have the two front wheels, two rear wheels. According to the instructions, they should just snap on. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so we've had some issues recently with applying some of the decals. So instead, we've painted them into place using a gold, as per what the decals would have been. Yet again, we've had further problems with decals for the top of the roof. So again, we decided that so that they could be shown in some form, they were painted in a gold colour. Moving on, we now have these two parts which fit on the side of the Mustang. They're basically like little side spoilers. But before we actually attach them to the car, we're going to give them a paint, and this is going to be painted black. And for that we are using a Humboldt acrylic number 85. So both of these parts have now been given a coat of paint. So it's now time to attach them. We will do one at a time, and we start with this side, and it's going to be this part here. So we use our sprue cutters to cut it off, the sprue. Nice and gently. Needs a bit of sanding down as well. So we'll give it a bit of a sand down. Ready? There you go. So it's all been sanded down. Obviously it has taken a bit of the paintwork off, so we will do a touch up once it's on. So to glue it into place, we use our standard glue with L contactor. Just give it a nice good old coat, and use some pinchers as well to help us out at this point. And give it some paint all along the edges, give it a good paint. And then put it into place. Again, use the pinchers to help us get it into place. And there it is, it's in place. There it is. So just to help it stay in place whilst gluing, use a clamp just to help us get it into place. Okay, so that's one done. Once that's fully dried, we then do the other side. So with both side spoilers now fitted, they've also had relevant touch-ups. The next step will be for the rear bumper. And again, prior to being fitted, we will give this a paint using previously used Humboldt Black number 85. So the rear bumper has now been painted and fitted into place. It was a very tight and fiddly fit, but it has gone in nicely. At this stage, some decals have got to be applied. Hopefully they go smoother than previous attempts. If you go back on the previous videos and updates, you would have known that we've had some issues with the decals. So we'll have a go and see what happens. So decals were yet again proven to be a great difficulty in being applied to the bumper. Therefore, as we have done with all the previous decals areas, they've been painted in place instead. Next to be done will be the addition of some lights on the bumper. You might clearly just about see there's 4 holes. The furthest 2 holes will be for the lights. These are the lights themselves. They're chrome parts, however the outer lamp area will be painted white, and to paint them white we are using Humboldt number 130. You can see that the 2 additional lights have now been fitted on the bumper. These 2 other holes have been provided to fit the rear bumper. The rear chrome bumper, of which is here. So with all the rear now completed, we move back to the front of the car. And for the front of the car, the next step will be the fitting of the grille. The front grille has now been put into place, and this is then followed up by having the lights fitted, of which will feature 1 chrome part that will go in first, and then that will be followed by the clear glazing which will go over top. To put the chrome piece in, we'll use normal Vel contactor, and then for the glazing we'll use clear fits. So the front lights have all been fitted now. So the next step will be the addition of the front bumper, which is this part here. However, as with previous parts, this will be painted before being fitted. It will be painted in a black colour using Humboldt 85. With the front bumper fitted, the next task was to apply decals. But, as we've found out many times already in this project, decals were found very difficult in being able to get applied correctly. Therefore, they were painted it on instead. Next, we're going to be fitting some additional parts to the front. We have these two lights here, as well as this chrome bumper bracket as well. These parts have now been fitted. All went in really quite well actually. Even the chrome bar at the front. There's not much left to do on this now. There's a couple of little bits to put into the engine bay. Obviously the bonnet's to go on. There's also got some decals to do along the sides and the number plates. Okay, so the next task is going to be fitting this, which is the turbo. This fits on top of the engine block there. So we will use some glue. Put some glue into place. And then this will fit snugly into place. Right, so now we will just leave that ready to set. The turbo in place, the next step will be for the bonnet. But prior to this being fitted, we're going to give it a paint, and we are using a Humboldt paint code, Humboldt number 85. We've had a bit of success with a couple of decals, one for this side and the same for the other side of the car. However, the front bonnet and a slight bit over the grille and over the back there wasn't so successful, and therefore instead of the use of decals they were painted instead. Decals for the front number plate as well as the rear, we had three options for each of these. So for the front we have chosen this one, and then for the rear this one. As you can see, the front number plate is now attached, and if we turn it round, so is the rear number plate. So the next task will be to now attach the bonnet into place, and that is the last major stage. After that, we will then have to give the car a full varnish spray over, at which point we'll then be able to remove the masking and call it done. However, first we've got to fit this part. Bonnet now in place, everything looks good. So we will now give this a varnish over, and to use that we're just going to use normal cheap hairspray, and at that point we can then take the masking tape off. So the Mustang has now been sprayed over using cheap hairspray to give it a polish over. So once that has all dried, we will then be able to take all the masking tape off, and at that point we'll be able to call it finished. So with the spraying completed, we will now look at taking the masking tape off. It's a very fiddly job and needs to be taken with great care, because obviously the last thing you want to do is now cause any damage to the glazing of which you've been protecting up till now. So you start taking it all off carefully. So you saw that it's just got the edges with a very good pair of tweezers, and then slowly but surely start taking off the masking tape like that. Again, taking care. As well, also having a second set of tweezers can help, just to help get a grip of what's started taking off, such as that. Yeah. And you continue doing that until all the masking tape has come off. So all the masking tape has now been taken off, both the front and the back. And we can now successfully say that this is the end to the Shelby Mustang project.
Hello from Mangley Town, and today I've got a little preview of my Meet the Fleet for my RTC livery collection, which does comprise a Lima, Hornby and Bachmann locos, and also my coach collection with a couple of Hornbys but mainly Bachmann ones there, and I'll show you those going on the layout next. But before I show you my RTC livery going round, here's a couple of bits out of my layout beforehand. That's my Class 800 test train set with the new coaches, and my regional railways Class 37 with, I believe, 15 coaches in my collection. Those videos are also on my channel as well. Let the CDs go around first.
And I do like to have things going around full speed if they can take it, which most things do on here.
And here we have both of them running on the layout. So we've got a Class 24 with all the blue and reds. And the Class 20, which isn't like on those points, with those track assessment vehicles and the Intercity Exhibitions one. another ongoing project is the storage for all of my coaches and locos. I'm getting to the stage where I'm starting to put some dividers in them so I can get all of my locos and coaches safely secured so they're not knocking against each other. So I'll share progress at a later stage on those. About the only other project that's keeping me busy at the moment is making and packaging up some of the items that I sell on eBay. But I hope you're all okay and hope to see you again soon.